Okay, everyone, welcome to Acumen's podcast. And this week we have a very special guest with us. We have Ian Clark with us, and welcome, Ian. Welcome to India, welcome to Acumen, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ameya. Welcome to the world of podcasts. I'm new at this, so bear with me, but looking forward to the conversation. It's great to catch up with you again after we've been denied close contact for such a period of time with this pandemic situation.
Okay, so for our listeners, a quick introduction to Ian, although he needs none. Ian is a well-known aviation enthusiast and experienced professional. He has a career span of more than 37 years in aviation industry. He's had a wonderful 4-year tenure as CTO of Aviation, where he spent more than 10 years building Aviation from early stage lessor to number two in the leasing industry. Ian has had significant contributions in Aviation's growth, including mergers and acquisitions. And his prior tenure in aviation also includes senior management positions in leading airlines in UK and MROs as well. I'm more than delighted to have Ian part of Acumen's advisory team now. He joins us as an asset management advisor, where we look forward to your experience, Ian, in shaping our asset management strategies, in your advisory on what we should be doing going forward, and your experience in the field of commercial lease management and training support as well. So warm welcome once again, Ian, and we have a few questions for you since we have you here.
It'd be a pleasure. I mean, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to take the questions, and thank you for such a generous introduction.
Thank you. So, Ian, first question. In the 40 years that you've spent in the industry, you would have seen several industrial cycles, events that have been shaping or reshaping the industry as it has evolved. We are emerging out of a pandemic, which was an unprecedented event, at least my generation, your generation as well. What do you expect, or what is your opinion on how this industry is going to adapt to this? What challenges it could face, and how it will reshape, or what does your crystal ball say?
My crystal ball, first, it shines brightly. I think the industry as a whole has always demonstrated it can adapt. I do think this recent challenge, which we are showing a positive transition out of, but we know we're not there yet globally. Certain jurisdictions lag behind, and we just wish them well in reaching the same stage as others who are at an advanced stage of setting targets and goals to get back to pre-pandemic states. I think the resilience of the industry, we look back, we have other examples in my period in the industry. We've had SARS, we've had volcanoes, we've had 9/11s, and each time it's a crisis, each time it's unprecedented. But on this occasion, I think this COVID pandemic has been just an enormous global impact, which is where it differs slightly to some of the other experiences I have lived through in my tenure in the industry. I think the green shoots of optimism are definitely there. As I say, I look at China, and I just hope they could join us, and it seems to be regrettably for that region, one step forward, two steps back. But we have to hold belief that they'll get there, and I'm pretty sure. Well, I am absolutely sure they will. The industry as a whole, if we break it into a few sectors that we understand, if we look at the OEMs, even before the pandemic, everybody understands Boeing's very challenging situation with the MAX aircraft and the difficulties that presented. We know that in my previous tenure with the lessors, we were locking horns with the OEMs on production rates. We felt production rates were too high. and there was oversupply, which was disturbing the dynamic that we would prefer to exist in operating leasing and opportunities. And I think that we won't be able to change the OEM's approach. I think production rates and ramping up rates will be something they strive for. But I think on this occasion they face challenges that are unprecedented in recommencing the supply chain. We mentioned the pandemic and the crises, but another crisis that will go into history now is the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. The oil price comes back again to be a problem, something we've maybe not thought about in great detail for a period of time, but it's there again now. And the consequences, the knock-on effects of that will be significant. The supply chain, when we look at raw materials and reliance on Russia as a region and Eastern Europe as a region, unquestionably that will put additional challenges on the OEMs. So there's a lot to go on in the OEM arena, but I think they definitely will recover. I think most people in the industry, as I understand it, think that Airbus, if we just pick on Airbus and Boeing as the two big main players, Airbus have an advantage over Boeing still. There is the legacy of the problems with the MAX. There are still issues with the 787. There are delays with the 777. And at the moment, the sun shines down on Airbus, but I'm sure they don't become complacent or get cocky in this situation. But the XLR A321 is becoming a very real aircraft. It could see a significant shift change, which I think a lot of people have expected, to smaller aircraft and more frequent sectors. But equally, as we've gone into this pandemic, leasing companies, airlines, we've seen aircraft go into storage, and there was an expectation a lot of them would never come back out. I think a higher proportion will return into the industry. Maybe certain asset classes, very large aircraft, A380s are still very questionable, and it's inevitable with the A380 because Airbus have stopped the production. But A330s were a concern, and passenger to freighter conversions seem to be very positive in regards to the life cycle for those aircraft. So the industry again proves its resilience, its creativity, what it can do. I think if we stop and think a moment though for the airlines, for the MROs and for the service providers, it's still a little opaque as to how that is developing. The airlines, I think it's good news in the majority of cases. Demand for flights is definitely significant and on the increase. In many regions we're told it's at pre-pandemic levels. But I think the challenges are more than just passenger appetite and ability to fly. The challenges are airport infrastructures, are pilots, are every aspect that we know, is required for an aircraft to safely enter into operational service and move passengers around the globe. Furloughs, layoffs in airports, in MROs, in the OEMs, in the supply chains. It's going to take time for that stuff to heal and to be re-established. So yeah, I think that gives us a general flavour as how I'm thinking and people that I catch up with and we discuss and we offer opinions as how it's happening. But I think the main message really is optimism. I think the green shoots are there, and the industry is on the way back. But there's a few bumps in the road, and there's a lot of delays in the airports and maybe some unfortunate negative media coverage of what I believe are isolated situations, which regrettably taken at face value by the reader or the receiver of information may deter their appetite to travel, etc., because they think the airport's shambolic, they're going to be trapped there all day and all night. I've travelled frequently in the last 6 months, and maybe I've been very fortunate, and I hope I don't jinx my journey home from India this time, but I haven't suffered, anything that you would consider to be a significant delay.
Right. Awesome. So you touched upon a few things, and there's a follow-up question where you touched upon certain game changers, right? Like every cyclic event or every market altering event typically gives emergence to certain innovative solutions, and you mentioned a couple of them, such as the re-emergence of potentially dead uh, asset classes like the large jumbos. What, in your opinion, could be the game changers for the next 3 years, the 3 year period, because we are emerging out of a 2 year long cycle?
It's a good question.
and
It's a good question. It's a good question. I think I'd take it in two parts, Ameya, if I may. I think first the main game changer before we get to the machinery, to the assets. The main game changer for me is the people in the industry and the flexible working. So I think across the industry, those that needed to have managed to sustain and even over-deliver in their tasks, whatever they may be, in a remote working environment. So I think that's a significant game changer that has a great many positives, but it also presents many challenges as we resume to normalisation. But I think the new normal carries a percentage of employees enjoying flexible working, maybe having screens and laptops like never before, and home working stations, etc. So I think that is something that this pandemic has maybe delivered a degree of positivity to the individual.
Right.
So I think that's a significant game changer. I think then if we focused in more detail on our industry and our aircraft and the next 3 to 6 years, I would compare it to, I have seen an enormous acceleration of electric vehicles, electric cars. The appetite in Europe is enormous, the appetite in Scandinavia. I think that they're close to 70% of new vehicles are all electric that are being sold. And so I think that comes right back on the agenda when you talk about in the next 3 to 6 years. So the former ESG discussions, the carbon footprint, the emissions, I think that is going to be once again the big agenda item. I think the sustainable fuels and what that looks like, how that can have an infrastructure that will work. And then also I think it calls into question the longevity of other assets, remarkable machinery, aircraft that we used to talk about having a 25-year life cycle. I think regrettably people talk, is 25 years really the right calendar life for equipment nowadays? Is it shorter? But as we see the new technologies come, as we can reduce on emissions, as we can get to sustainable fuels, that there will be an impact on the assets. But again, as we discussed in the opening gambit, the industry is resilient. It finds ways to adapt, to change. Will they be retrofit solutions? Is it not the whole asset that goes to the grave? So I think that will be something, an agenda item none of us will be able to avoid. We're all going to see it. I think we're all going to watch it with interest, because the social conscience for our climate, our planet, definitely, my kids and probably everybody else's kids now, they want to know what have we done to this planet and how we're going to repair it. And aviation as a target, I think occasionally unfairly picked upon compared to other modes of transport and other influences on the planet. But it's the one that seems to take the brunt and carry the burden. And I think the OEMs are up for the challenge. And then I think the airlines will, absolutely embrace the opportunities with the technologies that help us go. So yeah, bit of a long-winded answer, but I do think your 3 to 6 year horizon is going to see a great deal of focus on that.
Excellent. And yeah, you mentioned something about ESG, and part of that whole ESG push also includes a lot of unmanned vehicles, eVTOLs. And while you have been at Avalon, Avalon has been one of the pioneers putting their weight behind, putting their best foot forward in terms of eVTOLs. We've heard a lot of very positive coverage about their partnership with Vertical and what they're doing in the eVTOL space. Can you tell us from an urban mobility perspective, where does to what extent, I should say, does that really augment the last mile with the middle mile or the long haul and the urban mobility piece? How well complemented are these two categories?
I think I have to go in a direction with that question, Ameya, on a very personal opinion perspective.
Sure.
The eVTOL initiatives in Avalon, my former employer, they've occurred really in my absence. And there's excellent resource being applied. I think Avalon again demonstrate the thought leadership, the ESG conscience, and they have really taken the initiative. But I wasn't close to any of that. But what I am close to is following the industry and observing the eVTOL progression. I recognise, without detailed knowledge of what Avalon are involved in with Vertical, but I recognise not only Vertical, but other people interested in that market, people who are investing significant capital in the belief that this is the future. And I think we all have to agree with them. I think it's commendable that people are looking for all electric eVTOL solutions. Being here in India and the journey to the office in Bangalore or the journey from the airport to the hotel, and you look at the congestion and then you look upwards, and I don't count one helicopter. So the helicopters are there and they could shortcut a lot of that journey for people. But it's not cost effective, it's not affordable, and it's not environmentally friendly.
Right.
But I do think the all-electric eVTOL solution, if we pick on Bangalore or a city in Brazil that's very close to Avalon's heart, is Sao Paulo. And so areas of high density, high populations, it's got to be something positive. When you're as old as me and you look back, it was a cartoon, and it was the Zunies. But this is going to be very real. The activity when we look up is going to be immense. I watch with interest particularly the technology, the assets that are going to perform these journeys for us, the passenger loads that they will take. But then also my curiosity goes even further, the infrastructure. Yes. I don't know how many helipads are in Sao Paulo, how many helipads are in Bangalore or the other big cities in India. But we're going to see more, or secondary or tertiary airfields, that can accommodate this, and then all of the ATC that needs to go around this. It's going to be fascinating, but I do believe it's coming, and I do think it's something that our populations will embrace. And it would definitely be a solution to get people quickly across congested areas. Right. You can think of all the business advantages for it, but you can also think of the medical cases, etc. Medical helicopters are a wonderful thing, all over the world. And if we can develop an infrastructure around eVTOLs, that can shortcut situations like that, or can help a businessman get to a meeting. Isn't it just a great thing? And it's so, reduces the damage we're doing to our environment as well. So I think it's inevitable, and it's going to be a positive.
And kind of a sister segment to it is the drone technology, and this whole push towards unmanned vehicles being used for delivering packages, or this whole push towards using drone, which in conventional industries has been typically a military application or non-civil applications in most cases. Um, does it equally fascinate you in terms of the drone tech? Because again, it takes a lot of cue from aviation, but that's also becoming a commonplace in regular life, and what that would mean in terms of transferable technology coming from drone tech into mainstream aviation.
I think so. It's a significant game changer when it enters, because you look at the drones, you look at Deliveroo or whatever the equivalent might be, and the man on a bicycle or on a scooter who is delivering parcels, food, whatever it may be. And yeah, we already know of examples where drones are dropping off parcels, making Deliveroo deliveries. So proof of concept is there. I think for those of us in the industry, such as ourselves, it's the unmanned element of it that is the really fascinating point. It's I went on I travelled in an unmanned vehicle in Abu Dhabi 15 years ago.
Wow.
And it was bizarre. And then in more recent years, we understand what Tesla can do and what many drivers choose not to do with the technology the car provides. But it's a significant advance, and it seems inevitable to me it's going to happen. I think that level of confidence for the passenger, though, is a significant issue to overcome. And like everything in aviation, all of us who work in aviation, when we're talking to any external parties, when you're working for airlines, for MROs, top of the agenda is safety.
Yes.
So we can't spoil what could be something beautiful, wonderful, innovative. So all eyes and expectations will be on the highest level of safety once again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So, just as a last pointer, so ranked on the most innovative, let's say the most innovative things on the left of the scale and the most realistically adoptable on the right, where would you put these three things? Like if we say sustainable fuels, possibly electric engines in the future on airplanes, eVTOLs and drones, where would you put these on that scale?
Okay, so I'd love to bring in different generations here for this question, or for you to ask people, 10 years older than me, 10 years younger than me, and 10 years younger than that person. But where I sit on that, it's the sustainable fuels.
Okay.
I see that will be, and it already is, tangible. So that's a safe bet. Mm-hmm. And I think we know, that sustainable fuels, to some extent, whatever it's going to be, hydrogen, whatever it's going to be, mm-hmm. cooking oils, we don't know, but we know that is going to happen. Right. I think in the middle of the pack then is the electric eVTOL. Again, I've no doubts that it will appear. Aircraft or eVTOLs, however we describe them, are going to be approved. Prototypes will gain approval, right. And there will be a commercial business around them. And sorry, remind me the third category.
The drone kind of pushing technology into the civil aviation space, or like
Yeah,
reverse?
I think the drones again, maybe, but to a lesser extent, they're already there. If we take ourselves back to our aircraft maintenance environments and the amount of dedicated access, climbing frames and scaffolding, or you know, how the tail docks to get up to the tail, and that was just normal to go up and perform an inspection. You know, the wonder of a drone that can go up and it gives you, it's a borescope that can fly, and perform external inspections on the tailplane, on the crown skins. So it's already there, and I think the people who are at least 30 years younger than me, they are innovators. You know, so the tech space is full of bright minds, entrepreneurs who want to get on to the next good thing, and these technologies such as drones offer up huge opportunities. Untapped opportunities still exist, I'm sure. I probably just don't have the vision, and that's down to my vintage, I think, and probably tried and trusted and legacy methods of doing things. But I do tip my cap and applaud people who are coming up with more creative solutions and safer solutions. You know, people climbing to very high heights to inspect extreme points on an aircraft, fuselage or tailplane. It wasn't for the faint-hearted, and if we can now do that with a drone and a camera, I think that's going to be a good thing.
Absolutely. You mentioned your vintage, and that obviously is one of the most obvious reasons why we have you as part of Acumen and why we're delighted to have you here. So just digressing from the industry and coming a little bit closer to home and closer to the micro chasm of this whole thing, what strengths do you see that Acumen possesses that you would feel are pivotal in us doing what we do great today but can do better, and also what are the areas that you feel excited in terms of what Acumen can help our customers in achieving greater degrees of success in the coming days?
Okay, a good question to finish with, Ameya, I think. I would start at a very high level and maybe go for the less obvious. Something I've become more and more aware of, which I maybe had a bit of a blind spot for previously with Acumen, is the training department, which is a training department that can go as far as Part 147 training, which surprised me but impresses me, but also a syllabus, a curriculum that has been created by that training department to assist people in industry to expand their knowledge of asset management activities and duties and how people go about their work, but also to be available to people who may be considering entering the industry.
Right.
And this has been a very pleasant surprise to be introduced and for Acumen to share this with me, for the training team to share this with me. And I see huge potential, and I see huge potential to fill a gap that I have a personal concern with. I think my peers in the industry, people of my generation in the industry, have a concern with, is that the industry doesn't have the right volume, the right scale of new entrants, of new young people who have an appetite for a career in aviation. This training curriculum has blown me away. The level of detail, the accreditation to the universities, the diplomas being, people leaving this with a very credible credential, to a very high academic standard. And I hope Acumen can be successful with this venture.
Right.
I think it can be a legacy for Alok and his leadership team to take the industry out to the classrooms, to the colleges, and to people maybe already in the industry. But my pleasure in seeing this really is the thought that we could attract young people in. We could see young boys and girls in classrooms who have that appetite that I think Apollo missions generated in people of my era. You know, and an absolute desire to go on an aeroplane or have something to do with that industry. And also, I look at it, you know, it's India, Europe, the Americas. We've gone very tech sexy, you know, Silicon Valley, tech space, employment opportunities, and that seems to be where the younger generation head is at. Yeah. And everybody wants to go for the highest level of academia and qualifications, but actually they need to have a career in something that they will enjoy. Aviation has been very rewarding, very enjoyable for me personally. You can earn an excellent salary with pay and conditions in our industry, as we know. And I just think releasing that amongst young people once again and presenting that opportunity. I know in Europe, regrettably, in the UK particularly, the amount of apprenticeship opportunities to enter aviation are very limited, very small scale to what is needed. I look around the industry, whether it's in the airlines, the MROs, or the leasing companies, the available, suitably available personnel, it's limited, and we don't want it to dry up. So I'm very excited about the training elements that Acumen are taking to market, and I think it's excellent. So I really did want to give that some airtime on the podcast. It's obviously the less obvious. I think if we go for the obvious, the strengths of Acumen, the experience that they have, the adaptable workforce who do recognise they need to support their customer is something that I have been the beneficiary of. In my leasing experience, Acumen were a very, very good ally for the leasing company I was working with. The breadth of skills it ranges further than I thought. All of your asset management skills are well known to me. The ability to resolve issues, repossess aircraft, redeliver and transition onto onward lease, solve all those problems, and you have the back office capability and the reach amongst consultants to perform all that to a very high standard. But also, it's interesting as well that Acumen have expanded their offering. You as one of the people, Amit as the other, you are both ISTAT appraisers, and so valuations approved to an ISTAT standard is one end of the spectrum of expertise that people can reach out for, which I think is very encouraging, and an area that I'm sure Acumen would like to see expand and grow. And then, the potential in other areas of the business here is just, it seems to be unlimited. Acumen are very willing to listen to customers' requirements and to grow into those requirements. Interestingly, the industry is going through a phase where more assets are entering into potential part-out scenarios, and I know, and I've become aware that you are offering guidance to the industry, to interested new entrants in this region for those activities, and I think it's fabulous. But really, the reason I'm here is because I've enjoyed what Acumen can provide. I've always enjoyed the relationship with the personnel here, and I've always recognised the quality of the product. But I do tip my hat to the training programme and the legacy I think that could create of bringing new entrants, bright young people into the industry who will secure excellent careers and opportunities that I genuinely will exceed their expectations their initial expectations. Because we all enter this industry, you feel as though you have a glass ceiling, and if you're a mechanic, or you're always going to be a mechanic. But so many people evolve and transition into roles beyond their dreams, really. But that's what the industry offers. It offers fantastic opportunities, and that training program is something I think has been sorely missing. They're in short supply. I'm not saying they don't exist, but not the way this program has been constructed and the way I believe it will be delivered.
Awesome. That's so great that person of your stature and experience is actually validating that thought process of us, putting this program forward, putting this foot forward, and giving back to the community. Right, the experience that we've gained over the last 13 years, this is our way of kind of giving it back to the aviation community and creating the next set of leaders. And it's so heartening to see that you totally are bought into it. You can and you're happy that somebody is doing that.
I totally admire it. I will give it my full support. I take my hat off to Acumen for taking this approach. There aren't enough people in the industry investing in the future personnel that we would require. Regretfully, I can count them not just on one hand, but only on a few fingers. There's only a few people who are doing this kind of thing, and Acumen getting involved, I think, is very credible and something they should be applauded for. Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. And I mean, once again, so many thanks for being in Bangalore, for giving your time, and also for joining us in this advisory role. We can all definitely learn a lot from you, and we hope to see you more often in Bangalore, and hope to see you in more interactions in the future.
So thank you for introducing me to podcasts.
Thank you.
Very enjoyable. Thank you.
That's it, our listeners. This is the end of the podcast. Until the next time when we have another special guest on it. Goodbye for now.
To know more, reach out to us at sales@acumen.aero or support@sparta.aero. We would be happy to assist.